I've had a productive conversation with the Republican leader this afternoon. Our discussions were substantive, and we'll continue those discussions. I'm optimistic about the prospects for a positive conclusion. I'm confident the Republicans will allow the government to open and extend the ability of this country to pay its bills.
The good stuff is that Senator McConnell and Senator Reid both understood the gravity of default and how we had to avoid it. And while I don't want to get into details, the frameworks they each had were not that far apart. With the president, with Senate Democrats, with Senate Republicans, there's a will. We now have to find a way. We know the House won't find that way, so the whole, all of it rests on our shoulders.
What about Ted Cruz and the impact that he's had?
Look, I respect Senator Cruz. He didn't make any bones about what he was going to do when he came to Washington. The question is should we follow that leadership, or should we go in other directions and coalesce the majority of the American people? Look, I guess we can get lower in the polls. We're down to blood relatives and paid staffers now. I mean, it just, but we've got to turn this around.
The Tea Party took office because they think Washington is ignoring the underlying problems of spending too much money.
Well, if I could just interject here, I think you've got a problem coming that may be worse than all of that, and that is if the government has to default on its debt.
There are no payments due on October 17th to pay our creditors. There are no payments due until November 15th. That's why Moody's has indicated it's not going to have a major impact.
Congressman, I don't want to interrupt you here, but that's not what the Secretary of the Treasury says.
I think clearly the White House is trying to scare the markets. I think that's unfortunate. But at the end of the day, the reality is October 17th is a date that will not have a major impact unless the White House is able to create concern about that. But the real concern is not raising the debt ceiling, Bob. I mean, the frustration I have, and I think most Americans have, is not only the games, but more importantly, the ignorance of the major problem, a $17 trillion debt.
If there is that degree of disruption, that lack of certainty, that lack of trust in the US signature, it would mean massive disruption the world over, and we would be at risk of tipping yet again into recession. That was the impression around that big table. And when you are the largest economy in the world, when you are the safe haven in all circumstances, as has been the case, you can't go into that creating accounting business. You have to honor your signature. You have to give certainty to the rest of the world, and you have to make sure that your own economy is consolidating that welcome recovery that we have seen.